Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is a guide for round 2 of the 2024 Manufacturers Cup with the Group 3 cars at Trial Mountain. The settings will be a bit different this time around depending on the GT league you're in. If you're in GT1, this is a 22 lap race where fuel is at ×1, tire wear is at ×6, and you have to do 2 mandatory pit stops. If you're in GT2 or 3 leagues, you're only doing 11 laps and you'll have 1 mandatory pit stop. So I'll go to the lap guide and then I'll split the strategies up depending on the GT league. So let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, so getting ready to start the lap guide, do note that I have the brake balance at +1 to the rear. There are times where I do mess around with +2 to the rear, especially under race conditions, as the front tires do take a bit of a beating, but we'll talk about that when we get to the race strategies part of the guide. So go ahead and bring yourself towards the right side of the track, and you're going to use a little bit of braking shortly after you pass the start of the yellow barrier that is on the right. So what you want to do is use a little under 50% braking power and start to turn in. That way you maintain your momentum and use a lot of throttle control, especially for this little hill right here. You want to lift off of throttle so the car doesn't fly off the track. Then bring yourself towards the right, brake before the barrier on the right ends, and you're using full braking power for a very brief moment. Brake in a straight line when you use full braking power, and then when you start to ease off of the brakes, that is when you go ahead and start turning in. Make your way down to second gear and carefully get back on the throttle. Bring yourself towards the left, and you're braking before you pass the sign that is on the left. In the Porsche, you will go down to first gear and turn in when the curb on the left is about to end. Go up to second gear and carefully get back on the throttle. Stay towards the left, and you're going to brake and then turn in just as the curb on the left ends, and you will go down to second gear for this turn. Nice and careful back on the throttle, bring yourself towards the right. You're going to brake and then turn in when the tunnel starts. In the Porsche, you will go down to second gear, and you want to get really close and personal to the wall on the left without actually touching it. Aggressively get back on the throttle, shift up to third gear just as you enter the back straight. Now go ahead and take a nice deep breath as we get ready for the next turn just up ahead. And in the Porsche, as fuel would not be an issue, you do rev the absolute heck out of this car. Now stay towards the right, you're braking just before you pass the sign on the right. Brake as much as you can in as straight of a line as possible, and before the curb on the right ends, start to turn in, slowly ease off of the brakes and make your way down to second gear. And as you pass the boulder that was on the left, that is where you're carefully getting back on the throttle. Then brake before the tree stump that is on the left. You want to brake pretty early for this turn, as you'll quickly be going downhill, and it is really easy to overshoot this turn. So yeah, you're going to want to brake early for this turn. The same will be said for this downhill turn. You're braking when you're going halfway down the hill. So right about here, this is where you want to start to brake. That way you can take advantage of the curb that is on the left. There you go, taking advantage right there. Nice and careful back on the throttle. Let's stay towards the right. And then you want to brake shortly after the curb on the right starts. You can also use this specific barrier on the left as your cue to start to get on the brakes. So use all your braking power, go down to first gear, and you're going to park it for this left turn. That way you can set yourself up for a good exit out of the end of the chicane. Nice and careful back on the throttle, exit on second gear in the Porsche, and that is it for the lap guide. And in a moment, we'll go ahead and do a quick run through of these strategies. Alright, so for those of you in GT2 or 3 leagues, this is an 11 lap race where fuel is at ×1, so fuel is not an issue. Tire wear is at ×6, and tire wear is going to be brutal around here. and you do have to make one mandatory pit stop. So as early as the end of lap 1 or as late as the end of lap 10, that is when you want to make your pit stop. Otherwise, you will get bonked with a massive time penalty. You're going to be sad and everyone's going to laugh at you. But because of the tire wear situation, the strategy is going to be more or less straightforward, where you're pitting at around the halfway point. So this is going to be the end of lap 5 or the end of lap 6. You will definitely need to make a tire change because the tires will last around 7 to 8 laps depending on your car and how you're driving. Do note that some cars will be better on tires, so at least for me, I think the Porsche is decent on tires because I can make the tires last 7 laps. But for other cars, they may not be so lucky and they're going to struggle to make those 7 laps. And this will also depend on your driving style, because if you start to drive really harshly, you start to throw the car around the corners, then you risk wearing out the tires even faster, which will make you bleed even more time much sooner than usual. Now, I do have the brake balance at +2 or 2 to the rear because, at least for me, the front right tire is the one that takes the most beating throughout this race. So I want to try to not get as much tire wear towards that front right tire. So I went ahead and moved the brake balance a bit more towards the back. You can see now the start of lap number 5 that there's quite a bit of tire wear, and depending on how you're driving, you can start to feel the tire wear effects as early as lap 4 or lap 5. But throughout the race, you're going to want to be careful about how you're driving because you want to make those tires last. The gentler you are on the tires, the longer they last, and you'll be able to push back the tire wear effect much later, which can potentially benefit you, especially if those around you are wearing out their tires really quickly. Also, before I forget, do not hit the walls. Try not to go off track, especially in the first couple of turns, because if you hit the wall or go off track, you're gonna get time penalties, and you have to serve those time penalties at the start of the main straight, which is going to cost you quite a bit of time. So yeah, definitely do not hit the walls. I think there are some parts where there's barely any runoff area, so you want to be even more careful there to make sure that you don't even graze the wall. Whatever you like, do whatever you can to try not to hit the walls, because it's really easy to just tap the wall, get hit with a penalty, and it's going to make your life harder. Now do note, after Nancy's corner, which is this corner we just went through, bring yourself over to the left if you want to enter the pit stop. The pit stop area is before the final chicane. Now it is the end of lap 5, so we're more or less at the halfway point of the race, and you can see the tire wear on the lower left hand corner of the screen. It is not looking the greatest, so I'm going to go ahead and do a tire change. Now this is including the tire change. Your pit loss is going to be at around 20 seconds. And of course, everyone has to make the mandatory pit stop, so yeah, I just want to put that out there. I know people do ask me every now and then, hey, what's the pit loss? So yeah, there we go, 20-second pit loss. So we're going to go ahead and exit the pit stop. Do be careful about rejoining the track, because this part is pretty dangerous. I've seen instances where people rejoin from the pit stop and they end up running into the cars that were already out, and it causes really awkward situations. So yeah, do be careful about that. But after you do your mandatory pit stop, you just drive as usual. Try not to hit the walls, try not to go off track, and we're going to go ahead and skip it over towards the end of the race. So with this one, I was able to poke into the mid 150s. I don't know how the heck I did that, because I feel like I was off this past week in terms of pace. But yeah, so 11 laps, pitting at the end of lap 5 for me. And you can try pitting at the end of lap number 6, but do be aware that tire wear might be a bit painful at that point, so do be aware of that. I mean, unless if you're really good at tire saving, then that might not be too much of an issue for you. But for others, again, tire wear, pretty brutal. It's going to cause an issue for some people, especially if you're not the greatest when it comes to tire saving, or if the car is just rubbish on tire saving. But at the end of this race for GT2 and 3, I was able to finish the race in 20 minutes and 43 seconds, and I am adding the 1 second penalty from going off track. So yeah, 20:43 with a mandatory pit stop, and I definitely do suggest making that tire change because the tire wear, with it being at time 6, it's pretty brutal. So tire saving will definitely be the name of the game, and it's going to be even more of that when we talk about the GT1 league, because oh my goodness, with that one, you're trying to make the tires last 7 to 8 laps. And for some people or some cars, that's going to be a pretty tall order. So let's go ahead and take a look at the GT1 league settings, where it's a 22 lap race with 2 mandatory pit stops. So the strategy I'm going with here is trying to split the stints as even as possible. So I'm doing 7 laps on the racing medium tires, go to the pit stop, get a tire change, do another 7 laps, go to the pit stop, get another tire change, and then the third and final stint will be 8 laps. And by the time I reach the third stint, I'll have used up quite a bit of fuel, so the car will be a bit lighter, which means the car will be a bit gentler on the tires, which means it should be a bit easier to make the tires last 8 laps. But unfortunately, depending on the car that you're using and your driving style, that might end up being a bit easier said than done. But yeah, if you're in GT1, you pretty much have to tire save. You have to do whatever you can to make those tires last 7 or 8 laps. And yeah, if you're really harsh on the tires and the car is pretty poor on the tires, yeah, good luck. You're definitely gonna need it. But in this run, okay, I do want to say with this run, this was the first strategy that I was able to finally do a complete run without any colossal mess ups. Dude, I was way off pace in this one. I don't know what was going on, but anyways, that tangent aside, have I told you to not hit the walls or go off track? Because it can be pretty darn easy to do that. Because I definitely did not hit the walls about 20 million times when I was trying to record this video, or the footage for this video. Yeah, if you hit the walls, you're definitely gonna risk getting that time penalty. If you go off track, especially in the first couple of turns, you risk getting a time penalty. You have to serve the penalties at the main straight, and it is definitely not going to be a fun experience because you're going to lose a boatload of time. And if you're in GT1, you definitely don't want to hit the walls or anyone, because we have heavy damage. If you get damage, you have to go to the pit stop to get it repaired. It's not like in GT2 and 3 leagues where if you get damage, you wait around 30 seconds and it repairs itself. Nuh-uh, we can't have that luxury here. So yeah, definitely try not to hit anything or anyone. But as you saw right there, after Nessie's corner, before the final chicane, bring yourself towards the left to enter the pit stop. And the pit loss is at around 20 seconds, and this is with us only doing a tire change. I know some people ask me, hey, what's the pit loss with so-and-so? Yeah, so there's your answer right there. But yeah, you can see in the lower left hand corner of the screen, tire, yeah, it's a bit nasty. So you definitely want to pay more attention about your driving style and just try your best to not push the car too much. Don't be too harsh on the throttle out of the corners so the car starts sliding around. You don't want to do that. You want to try not to be too harsh with your steering. Don't get full steering lock, as that will just melt the front tires. And yeah, just there's a lot of thinking that you have to do to make sure that your tires are able to last 7 or 8 laps. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and skip an over towards the end of lap number 14. Tires are definitely not looking good here, but we are at the end of the second 7-lap stint, so we're going to go ahead and go on over to the pit stop and get the final tire change in. So this third stint that I'm about to do is where I'm going to do the longer 8-lap stint. And as you briefly saw, I've used around 33% of fuel, so that will make the car a bit lighter, which means the car will go a bit faster and your tires will be able to last a little bit longer because your car's lighter. So that's why I decided to make the third stint the longer stint, as I'll be driving around with a lighter car. And again, another 20-second pit loss, and that is considering that we are only doing a tire change. But you're probably getting tired of me yapping around, so I want to go ahead and skip on over towards the end of the race. I'm actually just going to do the final lap here, where I was doing okay making the tires last 8 laps, and this is with the help of a lighter car, but it's still just it was a bit sketchy and definitely didn't feel that great. So you got to be even more careful with the car as the tires really start to wear out. At least with me, I noticed that it was getting a bit easier to get some pretty nasty understeer where the car doesn't want to turn, and then on some corners where the car just wants to step out too much. It was a bit like right there, car stepped out a bit. It was a bit easier to get that little bit of oversteer, especially if it was unnecessary. You don't want that oversteer. So as the tires wear out, you just got to be even more careful. I mean, I guess you could say in a way that this is a bit of a survival race because you're trying not to hit things, you're trying not to hit anyone, you're trying not to get penalties, but you're also trying to nurse those tires to last however long you need them to last. And especially for the longer stint, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. So here, just trying to be really careful to here. I know that wall on the left, I found it kind of easy to hit because I always timed my turn-in a bit too early. So that's another part you want to be careful with, especially with heavy damage, because heavy damage is definitely not fun. And it's going to be a bit careful through here. And actually, oh wait, never mind. Definitely not careful there. Car stepped out. And just got to be a bit more careful right there, especially with worn tires. So it's going to try to keep it nice and easy through the final chicane. Go up to second gear, and we're going to go ahead and finish the race. So with 2 mandatory pit stops, doing a 7-7-8 strategy, this was a bit of a long race. 41 minutes and 31 seconds, and that is counting the 1 second penalty from the track limits. There's quite a bit of a long race ahead of us for those in GT1, and hopefully this video helped you out a little bit in getting an idea of what to expect for this race, whether you're in GT2, 3, or in GT1. But either way, that's going to be it for me. If you're going to do this race, have fun, good luck, and don't forget to say hi to Nessie, and I'll see you in the next video.